So before I start messing around with the tone curve, I usually change these settings to make sure the photo is properly exposed how I want and the lighting's looking how I want in terms of contrast and clarity. For now, I'm just going to click auto edit so that it's properly exposed. As you can see from the histogram, it's pretty even, or as even as it can be. So I'm going to go down to the tone curve, and this is what you want to do when you're editing with the tone curve. See these lines that make a grid? You want to make a point here at the intersections that the initial line hits on. And you can make another one right here in between the bottom leftmost point and the one right after it, right here. Now that you have that, this part of the tone curve changes the highlights, specifically this mostly. This part changes the shadows of your photo, specifically this part. And this is around the middle, which changes the overall in terms of both parts of the photo, the highlights and the shadows. What you want to do is grab this point and just move it up a little bit, move it down a little bit. You can move it to the side. Just move it not too much. You don't want changes to be too drastic, but just move around and see what looks the best to you. This, I think I want to bring this down a little bit because that, and to the right a little bit because that brings a bit more detail into this person's shirt, makes it less overexposed, less blown out. Now I'm going to go over to the shadows, grab this, move it around. Again, this is just move it around and see what looks best to you. I think somewhere right here. And if you make too many changes and want the point to go back to normal, like if you go here and want the point to go back to normal, put your cursor over the dot and just double click and it's back to normal. Now you can click again and change it. Yeah, I like it right here. Now I'm going to grab this midpoint, move it up, move it down, side to side. Yeah, I like bringing it over here down, which just makes the photo a bit more even and brings down the highlights, I think. Well, it brings the overall image, overall shadows and highlights a bit lower down to the shadows. And I think that makes the photo more even, which looks good. Yeah, right here. Now this point, we didn't make this point so that we can change it. We made this point so that we can change this point. Now moving this point isn't important. I barely do it. This just depends on the photographer. What this does is this part of the tone curve is the blacks, the deep darkest blacks, and this part is the whites. This can blow out your blacks, which a lot of photographers like. To show you what it can do, I'll do it pretty drastic, as you can see right here. It just makes them a bit more, makes the blacks more faded. Some photographers like to do it. I don't. I'm just going to leave it how it is, but you can see if you like it or not. Personally, I think leaving it normal down below is good. So that's overall how to change the main part of the tone curve. And if you want to see what changes the tone curve actually did, if it made your photo look better or not, you can go up here, right next to the tone curve on this button, click it, that gets rid of whatever your tone curve did. Click it again and it brings it back. As you can see, this main part just made the photo more, in terms of lighting, made it more even. Well, that's what I tried to do with the tone curve. Now you can just leave it here, but I'll also show you what these parts of the tone curve can do. So the reds, I'm going to do the same thing, make those points, but I won't do it here because I'm not really going to be changing this. So in terms of reds, what this does is, again, this is highlights, this is shadows of the image. Moving it closer to this corner makes, I'm grabbing the highlights right now. This will make the highlights more red, and moving it down makes it more green, sort of like greenish blue. And if you grab over here, this is the shadows. Moving it up will move the shadows, like the blacker parts of the image, red. Let's see, this person's shirt hasn't changed much because that's mainly highlights. And moving it down will bring it more to the aqua, green, blue mixture. And this, again, depends on a photographer, but I wouldn't make the changes too drastic because then it could look good for a second, but then later when you look at the photo, it could look really bad. So I'm going to change it how I like. I think I want the shadows to be a bit more blue. Just a tiny bit. And do I want it more red? No, I think it looks good where it is. No, I just wanted the shadows a bit more blue. Now remember, you don't have to change these, it's just a little bit extra. Now this greens, same thing, highlights of the photo, shadows of the photo. If you bring this over to this corner, either of these points to this corner, it'll make them more green, like the highlights more green, and the shadows more green. And if you bring it down, it'll make it more purple, which, just like you see over here, moving this green and purple. What this does is it makes the overall image more green or purple. The tone curve is really powerful because you can change specifically the highlights or shadows. So I'm going to, I think, bring the highlights down a little bit to purple. Shadows. Now we'll go over to blue. You should probably know by now, moving these to this side, moving them closer to this part of the tone curve will make the highlights or shadows more blue. Moving it down will make it more yellow. Just like you see up here, blue, yellow. Again, I'm just double clicking to reset the settings I don't want to change, like that. Some highlights. I don't really want to change those. Shadows. I think making them more yellow makes them really green, which I don't want. Move it up a tiny bit, and then go back into reds. Maybe bring the greens down a little bit, because what I'm going for, personally, is a bit more aqua, between blue and green, but really dim, like aqua looking photo. Now I'm pretty much done with the tone curve now. I'm gonna press this button to see what the tone curve actually did, get rid of what the tone curves did. As you can see, I think it looks a lot better now that I've changed the tone curve. It makes the photo look a little bit less blown out, a bit more even. And I like giving the photo a bit of a blue tint around here, but this person still looks normal. Their shirt still looks white, their skin tone still looks very dim yellow. Now, after you've done that, you're done with the tone curve. Now you can go through, do whatever you want. Like I usually like to bring in a vignette because I think that brings focus and makes the photo better. There's the before all the edits were done. This is the raw photo, and this is the after. I changed that by pressing backslash. But if you want, you can also go here and look at the before and after. Just like backslash because it's quicker. And I'll also probably get a radio photo on this person's face and the dough they're working on. And because I always have this inverted, I'm gonna uninvert it. That means that anything outside of the circle will be changed. Everything outside of the circle will be changed, and bring down the exposure a tiny bit to bring focus to this person, to this person's face and the dough they're working on. Make the overall image a bit more bright. And I think that's good. I think I'm done with this photo now. Before, after. And that is how you change the tone curve. Now you can even go back and change it. See after the edits you've done, see if you want to see if there's anything that needs changing. And after you practice, you just learn. You'll be able to make changes without just moving it around randomly. You'll be able to pinpoint where you want the points to go. And that's it. That's how you use the tone curve.